Hi, guys. Welcome to the Blank Drawings podcast by me, Tinatenda Vashibe. And so, today we're going to be talking about how not to take things personally as a creative, as a graphic designer, to be more specific. Now, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who's been listening, everybody who's been showing support. I can't thank you guys enough. It's incredible. It's overwhelming the support that you guys have been giving me, and it really does fuel the plane, so to speak, to just keep going and keep sharing. So, like I said, thank you very much, guys. And moving on, this is a topic that is something that I've experienced very much so on a personal basis, I guess you can say. And so it's a topic that I feel that a lot of fledgling, middling, experienced designers could be helped with, could perhaps be assisted by another perspective. Basically, seeing their lives through my lens. I'm not sure if that's a very good metaphor, but I digress. Um, there's always going to be some people that are not going to be in your corner. Some people that are not going to like you. Some people that are not going to like, maybe it's the color of your hair. Maybe it's the color of your eyes. Maybe it's the way you dress or the way you speak. Or maybe it's just, they just don't like human beings. There are some people like that. Believe me, I've met them. But at the end of the day, you still need to show up and you still need to work with these people, because the thing is, you can't choose who you work with sometimes. Like who approaches you, you can't choose them. And I would actually take that back. You can choose who you work with, but sometimes you can't choose who approaches you. So the type of person that perhaps may approach you, and maybe you may start working with them because maybe you didn't identify the red flags, or maybe the red flags at first weren't particularly red. Maybe they were leaning more towards orange. You know, you never know with these things. But one thing that I can say is that in every single abrasive situation that I've ever been in, none of these situations have been made better by taking it personally. You won't come out winning or come out swinging when it comes to that situation. You have to avoid, by all means, taking it personally. And I'm going to give you a couple of ways in which you can avoid taking things personally, especially when dealing with design clients. So let's start off with the situation that happened with me a couple of years back. I was doing a project with a client that I was familiar with. We had done quite a couple of projects together. And then in the middle of that project, they brought someone else in who was going to be not necessarily a moderator, but someone who was just going to be part of their company, who was not familiar with me or the way that we have worked together with this particular client, or the history that we did have, because there was also a personal connection involved. And so this person came in like the proverbial bull in a china shop. Is it a bull in a china shop, or is it an elephant in a china shop? One of the two. Either way, I'm sure you get the point. And nothing was working for them. Not a single thing was working for them. Mind you, this was a brand manual, a visual manual, just to be specific, and nothing worked for them. I tried to be as civil as I possibly could be in terms of asking what the actual root of the issue is so that we can deal with it from the root, trying to be as logical as I possibly could. But point blank, they just didn't like it. They just didn't want to work with me specifically. What I ended up realizing from that project is that it's not so much that there was something wrong with what I was creating, so much as they had another designer that they wanted to work with. So when they when they came into the company, they had a designer that they wanted to work with, that they had worked with before, and they trusted. So they wanted to get myself off that particular project so that they could work with this other creative, which was fine. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, you do your best. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But my takeaway from that is that sometimes it's not you. Sometimes you don't necessarily have the responsibility in the sense that you did something wrong. So that person doesn't like you because you did something wrong. That person attacks your work because you didn't do something correctly. You didn't research properly or anything like that. Far from it. Sometimes people just having a bad day and they just put it out on the designer because it's easier that way. And sometimes people have preferences that you may not necessarily meet and that they're not willing to communicate because they just want you excommunicado. I've been watching too much John Wick, as you can probably tell. But yeah, that was my takeaway when it comes to that particular situation. Obviously, it's not going to be like that in every situation. There are going to be times when we designers do make mistakes. Of course, we all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. And when you get into that situation, you have to fess up and you do have to apologize and take responsibility, which is fine. Like I said, we're all human, but I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. So I'm going to come back to it. Some of the things that you can do when you come across uh, the proverbial raging bull. And the first thing is to remain professional. I can't emphasize this point enough. You have to remain professional. You have to, if it's going to be standing your ground, that's fine. That's not a problem. But you don't have to necessarily be overly firm. You can be firm, confident, and professional. That's fine. That's that's not a problem. At the end of the day, we're not dealing with robots here. We're dealing with human beings, and you have to stay professional in how you speak to people, how you're going to be conducting yourself, how you're going to be talking about these people in the future. Naming and shaming is definitely something that I've seen people do, and I'm not quite sure about how good of a practice that is, especially if we're considering something that is supposed to be professional practice. I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest, like I said, firm, confident, professional, civil, as best you can. Second of all, do not involve emotions. The moment something becomes an emotional issue when it's supposed to be a business issue, something has gone horribly wrong. We have to be very honest with ourselves when it comes to things like this. You cannot involve your emotions when it comes to business. You have to be as clear of those emotions as you possibly can be. I mean, sure, crack a joke, that kind of thing. Because, like I said, we're dealing with human beings, you're not robots, but do not involve your emotions. Do not get angry. Remain indifferent to the best of your abilities. Because one thing that you can't get back once it's ruined is your reputation. And that is something that, as a designer, as a creative, you need to hold fast. You need to hold on tight to that which is your reputation. Because you don't know who's watching. You don't know potential employers are watching, potential business partners, potential investors may be watching how you deal with a certain client, especially if they're being aggressive and abrasive. So you need to avoid involving emotions as best you can. Of course, by all means, go and vent somewhere else when someone is getting on your very last nerve, but don't involve the emotions. If it gets to the worst of the worst, if you feel like you absolutely cannot deal with this person, this is the worst client in the world and all the universe, by all means, you have it within your discretion to cut ties. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, like I said, we're all human. I feel like I'm gonna be saying that quite a lot in this particular episode. But yeah. Third thing, do not attack the person who is being abrasive or aggressive with you. Attack the problem. If, for example, they say that they don't like the logo that you've created, ask probing questions as to why. What is the main issue? Is it is it a matter of missing the brief altogether? Is it a matter of some elements that are off? Is it a matter perhaps of even something as simple as color preference? We have to understand that we have to be the good communicators. Clients don't necessarily need to be good communicators, but we do need to be good communicators because we don't only deliver visual based solutions standalone, we also need to explain what these visual based solutions are comprising of. Where do they come from? What is the symbolism behind it? How is it going to fit into my current branding approach or marketing approach? How exactly is any of this going to help me in the long run, in the short to medium term? All that. We do have to articulate that. So we need to have good communication skills. Clients don't come with a I need to be a good communicator tag, but we do. So that is something that I also learned the hard way, I guess, you can say. Yeah, that was definitely the hard way that I've learned that. But life is full of lessons like that. I'm going to go on before I start lecturing again. Anyway, the third, or rather the fourth point is that people have their own biases that have nothing to do with you. People have issues with certain, maybe it's visual directions, maybe specific fonts, maybe it's they just don't like the fact that you work, perhaps it's in a certain country, perhaps they just don't like that, and that's their own bias. It's literally has nothing to do with you, and so as a result, you taking it personally over someone else's bias is not a good idea. It's far from being something that would help you in the long run. Certainly is not something that would help you in the short term. So I would definitely suggest that get to know the person that you're going to be working with as much as you can and understand their certain biases that they will obviously have. And this is why it's so important to have discovery calls when it comes to clients, because you get to understand certain nuances that perhaps you will not be able to understand if you just give them a questionnaire. So it's always important to have a conversation with your clients so that you understand these certain biases, reservations, things of that sort. It'll help you in the long run to not only not take things personally as much, but also understand those slight little nuances that certain people have when it comes to working with creators. And you also have to understand that working with creators is, for some people, a difficult task because we are dreamy, we are imaginative, we are people that literally just, if you don't give us direction, we will imagine and create anything and everything. You know, I feel like three of the highest functions of the human being is to inspire and to create and to assist whoever is in your vicinity or beyond. So if we as creatives can create and inspire, and by that same token assist our clients in whatever their problem may be, then that is the highest form of the human, in my opinion. So I would definitely say that when it comes to dealing with clients, these are the things that you need to consider when it comes to taking things personally. It's not always about you. And saying that sounds like it's an insult of sorts, but it's far from it. I've understood that I need to separate myself from the work sometimes. The work that I put out is not me on a canvas. It's a conception of my mind, of course, is a piece of me, but it's not all of what I am could be. That's the beauty of the human form as well. We can evolve, we can create more, we can be different, we can do things differently. And with the simple thing called conversation and discussion and communication, you can actually get to the end product, which is a satisfactory solution for your client's problem. But none of that, you would never get to that if, let's say, for example, a bad piece of feedback comes to you and you take it personally, because you will be functioning through that entire project with the chip on your shoulder. And that's not a good way to be functioning as a creative. We need to make sure that we separate ourselves sometimes completely from the work that we do. Like I said, it sounds cold and calculated, but this is the nature of the business. Sometimes you have to make sure that you create as most aligned to the brief as you possibly can do without getting agitated by the feedback that you get, or at least showing how agitated you are by the feedback that you get. Because make no mistake, there will be some feedback that will literally just have you throwing your phone at the wall. There will be feedback that comes through that just makes it seem like you did absolutely nothing. The feedback that kills the most is when you feel like you've created a finished product and then the client just says, well, this is a good start. That is something that a lot of creators have come across and a lot of creators have been agitated by. I understand. I understand. I've been there. The last bonus tip that I'll give when it comes to how not to take things personally is make sure that whatever creative project that you're going to undertake, you do your research. And above and beyond doing your research, you always revert back and refer back to initial conversations. You set the standard, you set the precedent for what this creative endeavor is going to be like. How exactly is it going to be undertaken? And so, as a result, if someone comes back with feedback that deviates from that, you can quite simply show them receipts. You can quite simply show them back to that conversation, and that tends to calm a lot of people down. Because if they didn't read the terms and conditions and you let them know that they should read the terms and conditions, that's not really on you. That's not your fault. That's theirs. And you do have to communicate. Before you start any creative endeavor, you do have to communicate your process, how you work, if it wasn't already abundantly clear that this is how you work. And like I said, always make sure that you show receipts. Have receipts and keep them. They go a long way. In any case, that's all I had to say for today. I would strongly urge that you try and practice this detachment when it comes to the creative process at times, because it will save us a whole lot of grief and it will make us better creatives ultimately. And then I was having a conversation with one of the listeners last week, and he was asking me about some of the things that I said in the last episode, specifically about YouTube. And he being a budding creative, he asked me which channels to look at. How exactly do you weed out the good channels from the bogus channels? Well, the beauty of YouTube is that people always refer each other to the channels that are the proper channels. So, for example, I started watching The Future with Chris Doe, and from there I met Will Patterson, I met Roberto Blake, I met Satori Graphics. So once you just find one channel, one genuine channel, the rest is just a matter of looking at your suggestions. That's the beauty of the YouTube algorithm. Thank goodness for YouTube. In any case, this podcast is going to be on YouTube soon as well, so be on the lookout for that. So the YouTube channels that I did mention that would be really good for a budding designer or budding creative would be Satori Graphics, Roberto Blake, and then The Future. And then this guy, I really hope that I'm really not butchering his name, because he's Nigerian, and it's Oladimeji Ajegbile. Yeah, I hope I didn't butcher his name. If I did, I sincerely apologize. And thank you so much for listening. I'll be here next week, same time. Looking forward to hearing from you in the comments, and take care, guys.